Hello and welcome to The Agent is In, our monthly webinar to talk about all things CFEngine. I'm Nick, and we've got Cody and Craig's on the way with us to talk about automating CFEngine policy testing. So this was something that we touched on, I think, during the last episode when we were doing some policy examples. There was an example that kind of covered some policy testing stuff and talked a little bit about testing.cf. That is in the policy framework, and got a couple other questions kind of along those lines, so wanted to kind of hit on that topic again and talk about a couple of other things. Let's see here. Let me switch over to here. So there is this repository where I've got some policy that deals with the apt package manager. The policy that's in here is pretty simple. I basically wrote it as an example to hook in for testing so that there's a more practical example. So the only thing that this policy really does is configure a pin package for apt. And we scroll down here. There's two bundles, basically. Let me go up to here. So there's apt pin packages, and this is kind of an abstraction on the underlying policy, which actually does the configuration. But this abstraction allows it to be integrated with inputs from CFBS and the build infrastructure. So you can see here, like in CFEngine Enterprise and Mission Portal, where you have group data and configuring pinnings for MD-ATOM, the version that we want to be pinned, and then the priority that should have. And here's a different group with a different pin. And then we can see that when this policy runs, it makes sure that the file exists with the specific content that was configured. And on this host, we had two groups above, but here we can see that, both of those groups, Ubuntu and Ubuntu 22, both of those are Ubuntu, and we can see that data is merged together and that these pinnings end up both being present on this Ubuntu 22 host. And then there's this library apt pin packages, which is actually the policy that does the work, right? This one takes a set of parameters, so you can call this then from your own policy. You don't have to use the other abstraction that uses specific variables. You can just hook it in and use it. So it takes a couple of different variables for configuration. So in the apt namespace, package version priority pinned bundle, there's the preferences directory. So this is instrumentable primarily for testing, so that depending if you're running some tests unprivileged, then you wouldn't have access to write to etc apt preferences.d. So if you're going to be running your tests unprivileges, it could be useful to override this. And then the main meat of the configuration is this apt namespace, pin packages, config variable. So this is a JSON data structure, an array of objects, and then each object, they're anonymous objects, so then each object has package version priority and state that you give it. And that's basically that. So if we go and look down here in the tests directory, we can see that this directory contains tests, and these tests are super rudimentary. It doesn't actually check the content, doesn't actually check the behavior of the configuration. It just checks that the policy does what we want. But it can be taken further to do some more checking. So each policy file that we have over here, apt pin packages, again, that is the CFBS module that works in well with some of the other larger ecosystem, and then pin package is kind of the library or the thing that does the meat of the work. But there's a directory for each one of those, And then inside of the directory, we've got test files. So app pin packages test file, pin packages test file, and then we've got some data that we're setting. So this will be the policy entry, the thing that we run, and then this has some settings in it. So in this example here, like the README says, this was being run unprivileged, and so this emits some errors running unprivileged about trying to set ownership on some files, because you can't do that. But these errors aren't really considered as part of the test. The test is actually based on the inspection of the state that you're doing. So even though it does spit out some errors here, that's totally expected when running unprivileged. It wouldn't, I mean, you could instrument it so that it doesn't try to manage permissions in the case of unprivileged execution, but there's really not a whole lot of value in doing that extra work. But we can see here when we run this that it executes some policy, and then down here at the end, it's kind of spitting out this summary. So testing generic report. So there's this summary here, 2 tests, none failed, 2 passed. So we can see here testing pin package config file present, repaired. So it does actually repair a file if it's not there. And then if you're making sure that pinned configuration is absent, like that's basically what it's testing there. So if we go down and actually look at one of these tests, let's look at pin package first. So here we can see that we're using body file control, which is how you can load policy from another policy file. So it is loading the pin policy package relative to where this policy is sitting, right? So this is expected to be the entry or the first policy file that's read instead of promises.cf. So up 2 directories, down into policy, and load that pin package, which is right here. And then also it's loading testing.cf and stdlib.cf from sys.libdir. So sys.libdir, that path depends on who's executing. So if you're a privileged user, that's going to be var CFEngine inputs lib. If you're an unprivileged user, that's going to be your home directory .cfagent /inputs lib. And if you set the CFEngine test override workdir variable, then it's going to be relative to that path inputs lib. So just be aware. So it's expecting to be able to find the MPF as part of this. And then when this runs, if this is the entry, this will be the thing that runs. So it does init test and check. So here we can see init. We're using the pin package version to make sure that there is a pin configuration that exists, so that we can make sure that it's absent later on and that it actually cleans it up. Then we move into exercising that policy. So again, we make sure that the Z package is present, so it'll create that if it doesn't exist. And then we make sure that A package, where we initialized it up here, is set to absent. And we can see here in this test, it's just exercising the fact that it doesn't care about casing. These values that will end up in the configuration file don't really matter when you're making it absent. And then we move on into kind of checking the results of that. And again, this is pretty rudimentary, so we're just going to check the state. And we need to basically look and see if that Z package file exists. And if it exists, then we consider that a test pass. And so for being able to track that, we're using namespace scope classes. So test pin package config file present, and then we're using the results classes body from the standard library. So you're going to have the result kind of appended on the end of that prefix. So that'll be like repaired is what we're looking for. And then we're just echoing out that, we found it as expected. And then as a result of this promise, which is only run when that file exists, we define that namespace scope class. Same thing for the A package that we want to make sure is not present. We define that class when this condition is met, and we're just using a command here so that we have a promise to define a class based on an outcome. And the other reason why we didn't use like a classes type promise for this is because classes type promises and vars type promises are really eager. They're going to be evaluated early during policy execution, but we don't want the state to be checked before the policy is actually actuating those promises. So that's why we used a commands type promise here, because it'll be delayed into the actual policy execution and not be affected by the pre-eval. And then we have this check report. So this is basically the instrumentation for writing out the metadata so that some other testing stuff can come along and slurp it in and make it maybe more visuable or hook it into another system. So I set this up using JUnit. So this test, we're registering this first test. It'll be okay if this class is found, and we want the output to be for JUnit. And then we're also going to be okay if we find this class, and the same thing. We're registering this with JUnit, and then we write out this JUnit report here. So let's see here. Let me boost this up. Can you see this screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
All right, great. So here we are in this repo. So let's go over here to tests, and let's go to pin package, and let's just go ahead and run this CFEngine -AIF pin package. So again, I'm running unprivileged, so of course we can't set the ownership, but it did go ahead and create this file with this content. Obviously that method failed because it couldn't set the ownership. And then we can see that it rendered some stuff down here. We've got our test summary here. And if I look at this, here is the JUnit output. So we can see it's got XML information that there are 2 tests here. There are 0 failures. And then each test case that was registered is kind of in here. So then if I were to mess up this test, and let's just let's change what we're looking for. So now I'm going to be laying down this wrongly named file, but then of course that's not going to align down here with where we're checking for things, because it's not going to be looking for that mistake. And if we run this again, and look at this, oh, it didn't fail. It didn't fail in my thing here. What's the deal here? 2 failed, deleted. Oh, it's probably because of no cleanup. That's why. Artifacts, Z package. All right. So I don't have anything to clean up at the end of that test. So the last time that I ran it, it created the Z package file. The Z package file was there. So then our test expectations were correct. So I go ahead and remove that, run this again. And now if we look at this JUnit, now we can see that that there are 2 tests run, 1 failure, and then here we've got the one that passed. I'm surprised that it doesn't show the one that failed in there, but
We'll look at that. Yeah, Some of the formats are kind of funny.
Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of the high level. Let's go ahead and look also just here at this def.json. All right, so here, the only thing that we're overriding is this preferences directory to set it into the artifacts because I'm running as unprivileged. And if we go ahead and look at the apt pin packages one, because this one, again, well, let's just go ahead and look at it real quick. So this one is loading the apt pin packages policy. It's also loading the pin package policy because this one uses that one, loads standard lib and testing. And the test is basically identical. The difference is that when we're testing, we're just using this one apt pin packages bundle, which is looking for specific variables to be set. And if we look at def.json, we'll see what's customized for this test environment. We've got, again, overriding that artifacts directory. And then here we're setting config to basically those things that we would put into the other bundled parameters. So that's kind of, high level on more put together case of policy that, custom policy that you write, where you want to write some tests to make sure that that policy behaves the way that you expect. And then I'm going to kind of hand it over to Craig, who's going to show us kind of like the next logical step in this progression is to do this sort of thing all of the time, right? Make this part of CI and ingest this. So.
Yep. Okay, so I have here, can everybody hear me? Yes, you can hear me? Okay, great. So here I have this CFEngine apt. I made a fork of it, and I automated the tests. So let's see, the first thing I did was I made this into a, currently it's the CFPS module. I added the bits, let's see, upstream main CFPS.json. I added the bits to make it also a project. So this build key in here makes it a project. And if we look down here, we've got the provides stuff that makes it a module. So that's the first thing I did. And then from there, I added the policy to go in. That's where the actual stuff is. And then I also added the tests, but I didn't add them as policy files because we don't want them to be included in the inputs. They're just test files. And I also added this overlay, which is a popular thing for Nick and I to do when we're fixing bugs in master files. So this allows us to just change one file. And it's actually really handy because I have this testing.cf file here, and I can just copy this over into master files lib and start a PR over there. And that's what I've been doing, actually. I'll just like copy it back and forth, depending on if I do reformatting or code review or whatever. And so I had to fix a couple of bugs in testing CF. So that's cool. By doing this work, get things a little bit better. So that allows me to build the project and have all the files in out master files. So it's kind of ready to go. And so what I decided, I've been automating various things lately with GitHub Actions, and I found that it's easiest to use a container, like a Linux container, so that the environments can be kind of uniform. I, unfortunately, for now, I'm still on a MacBook, Mac OS, so I use Docker Desktop. This is fine, it works. And so I worked on a Docker implementation of running the test. So in this shell script, I run CFS build to get any changes that we might have made. I made an image on Docker Hub that has this configuration. So basically just install Debian. We clean it up a little bit to make it smaller. We use our quick install script, and we install an agent. This part's not important. It would be if you wanted to run systemd or something like that, and I don't. I just want to run the agent at every moment during the test. So let me move the bumper here. So the first thing I do is I run that image and I map the built master files over into var CFEngine inputs. So it's kind of like I just push it right in to where it's going to be, where it wants to be. And then I run CF promises just to make sure that any policy changes I made are okay. And then I look through all of the CF files inside of the test directory, because I know those are my tests. And for each one of those, I run, let's see, yeah, I run the test basically. So I run CFEngine, just like Nick was doing with the test. And then after that, I do a couple little funny things. I found that on my Mac with Docker desktop, I didn't have any permissions problems, which is what I would expect, but for some reason on GitHub, I did. So I've got this CHL stuff in there that's kind of messy. And then down here, I changed the results to be TAP, test anything protocol, because it's more plain text, easier to grep and grok and stuff like that. And so I look for all the TAP files, and then I go through and I say, okay, well, here's the file. And if I find not okay, which is the keyword in the results, then I exit code one and exit there. So this is kind of the preparatory thing to automate it, is to make it repeatable easily. So I've got this little script here that runs it, pipes everything to a log, and then gets me into the log. So I'll just run that. This is my traditional I script that I leave everywhere. It's very handy to run inside of Ed, my editor. Okay, so here I've actually reduced the verbosity significantly here. So this is the result. So the test result is I ran this test. I got 2 tests, and test 1 and test 2 are okay. The other one, test 1 and test 2 are okay. And then I got the less command, and if you notice, I put set-e here. So if this command would have failed, then it would have popped out. So that done, things are nice. Now I'm going to do a GitHub workflow. And in here, actually I could remove this. I was playing around with lots of test results parsers and reporters and publishers, and I found them all severely lacking or very heavy. Like I don't want to install a bunch of node stuff just to parse some tap file. So that's why I did that grep for not okay. So here, basically, I just do update to get CFBS in the runner in GitHub, and I just run the script. And this is kind of the pattern I use a lot, just so that there's not a lot of logic in the proprietary system. Everything that's kind of logical and necessary is more available to just a plain system. Obviously, I'm still using Docker, but that's fine. Okay, so now I've got that going and I've got that going. So at that point, you can check out a PR and look at actions. Oh wait, I have to go, I haven't merged this PR yet. So I go to my account and look at actions, which at first I had no idea where it was. So there it is. I mean, a while ago. So here's this test running. And you can see it installs the software, the CFES and Python. And then this one's much more verbose, but it's basically running Docker and then running those tests. You'll recognize some of this inform messages that Nick was seeing. And then you'll see down here that it's catting out the file and saying, okay, 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 and exit 0. So that's why this is green here. And that's basically it. And yeah, so every time you push a commit up to this PR or up to your PR, you can see, sometimes they'll fail and it'll tell you why. And so now you've got it automated. It's pretty sweet. I did have to change a few things. We can just look at it up here maybe. But yeah, so it's pretty cool and it's nicely automated. And so now, and if we merge this, then anytime anybody makes a PR, this will start running as they push the PR. There's the Docker script. So here's the testing CF script. I made a few changes there to fix up tap formatting. It's kind of still ongoing. And then I had to fix up a few things in the tests. Like I switched the JUnit report to tap. The way this works is that anything other than tap will delay it so that you can not send out report informs as it goes. So that's kind of a little funky, but I tried to be explicit about what I'm asking for here, delayed tap. And so then I do a testing tap report instead of a testing JUnit report and name it .tap file. And that's really all I did. I kind of fixed up some mismatched classes and things that were present for me. Yeah, and that's it. Any questions?
Awesome, Craig. Yeah, so that's a pretty good example of, taking some custom policy, being able to wire in like continuous testing, so that as you're making changes, you can validate those results.
Yeah.
Again, those tests are just checking that the files do or don't exist, but you can certainly do more deep checks, like making sure that run an apt update, and then making sure that some pinned packages aren't upgraded or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we could make, since we're we could go a couple different ways. You could use several different runners of different distributions, or you could use different Docker images and really set up a matrix of I don't know 3 or 4 major platforms you want to try, and then actually do create those files in the right place, and yeah, like you said, do those operations for real. And I think that'd be really tight.
Anybody who's on have any questions about testing in general, or how any of this stuff works? No?
No,
Going once, twice.
it's
So
just it's so simple and straightforward, Nick.
straightforward.
There's nothing to ask about.
Well, I guess that's it for this episode of The Agent is In. Thanks everybody for coming, and we'll see you next month.
Yep, stick around after we stop recording if you have any questions or want to talk about something else.
Bye, chit chat.